Hi folks, you're very welcome to this week's episode of Genos Live, and this is one about which I'm really personally very excited because we have with us 4 curators from TEDx events and an expert in how to get your TEDx talk together when you land on the stage in TEDx. And it's a session that I wish I had the opportunity to attend before I did my first TEDx talk. So really exciting session today. And as we start to dive into it, what I encourage you to do is to start thinking about the questions that you're bringing into the session. Because this is one of those sessions where we've already had people starting to pose questions, and we said, look, just hold them back a little bit. So right now, if you're bringing questions into the session, get them in good and early, put them into the chat, because in a couple of moments I'm going to bring in my co-presenter Camilla Long, and that's going to free me up so that I can watch the questions and we can bring them to our panel later on this morning. So start popping those in. And while you're popping them in, why not pop in where you're dialing in from so we can see who we've got with us this morning. So yeah, you're very welcome. Let me do the traditional sort of 45 seconds or thereabouts of advertising. Genos International are an emotional intelligence organization. We specialize in assessment, training, development, and coaching in emotional intelligence. So our business is really about helping organizations to help their people to connect better, to create more empathetic, emotionally intelligent, and psychologically safe workplaces. We also certify professional coaches, consultants, trainers, human resource and learning and development professionals to use our tools and our programs to do exactly what we do. Finally, the piece that we boast and brag about most, because we're most proud, is that we have been for the last 5 years one of trainingindustry.com's top 20 assessment companies in the world, something that makes us very proud. One of the things I mentioned last week, and it got a really tremendous reaction, is we've had a lot of clients say to us that just as people thought that they were coming out of that period of pressure, the 2 years of the pandemic, with the war in Ukraine and the impact that that's having on the economy and everything else, that they're finding that people are quite flat, quite affected, quite stressed, quite worried, and we're looking for guidance on how do you support people in an environment like that. Well, we put together a very simple 90-minute masterclass designed specifically for leaders, team leaders, to support their people, understand what their people are experiencing, provide a more supportive environment, and spot people who may be struggling so that they can support them more effectively. If that sounds like something that might be useful to you, well then just pop a comment into the chat box and we'll track you down later on and let you know what it's all about. Now, before we bring today's guests on, let me tell you about next week. Next week we have Vanessa Druskad, and she is the world's foremost expert on belonging. She has done a huge amount of science on a huge amount of research on what it takes to help people feel like they belong. And she's going to talk to us next week about what her research says about what you can do to make people belong. So, because when people feel they belong, they engage more effectively. The environment becomes much more connected. Psychological safety goes up, and of course productivity goes right up there with it. Now, in a moment, I'm going to bring on my co-presenter Camilla Long, but let me tell you a little bit about her before I do. Camilla is the co-founder of Bespoke Communications. In her interactive keynotes and programs, Camilla inspires teams to develop a fresh approach to their communication inspired by behavioral science. She personally coaches business leaders and senior executives in public speaking through her company's Speakeasy public speaking course. And if you hold your camera over the QR code that's on the screen right now, it'll connect you through to details of that 8-week course that helps you prepare either your TED Talk, if you've landed one already, or your signature talk. And I can tell you, Sarah and Camilla are fantastic. They helped me prepare for my TEDx Talk, and they're absolutely wonderful people to work with. Camilla and Sarah have been the public speaking partners to TEDx Stormont for many years, and they've supported a further dozen TEDx events throughout the UK and Ireland. They have coached over 100 TEDx speakers, and Camilla is looking forward to delivering her own first TEDx speech later in this year. So you're very welcome, Camilla.
Well, that is a scene setter, Derek, and thank you so much. And welcome to all of you who have joined us this morning at this event on how to land your TEDx talk. I am so excited to run this event for you this morning because, a little bit like Derek, I do feel like there's a lot of mystery around TEDx events. There's a lot of misconceptions around TEDx events. And if you have an idea worth sharing, it can be a challenge to work out how do I find a platform for that idea. So by the end of this morning's event, you will have gotten inside the brain of 4 talented TEDx curators to understand how they go about preparing for their events, what it is that they want from their events, and importantly for you as an aspiring TEDx speaker, what it is that they need from you as a speaker to run an absolutely fabulous event. Now, before I get started, what I'd like to do is dispel some myths, first of all. A lot of people harbor some misunderstandings about what TEDx events are. So let me start off by telling you, first of all, what TEDx events are not. A TEDx event is not an event made up of professional or motivational speakers. Absolutely, you will go along to a TEDx event, you will be inspired, you will be motivated, you will definitely look at the world differently. But those people standing up on the stage, standing up on that red TEDx dot, are not necessarily accomplished public speakers. They're not necessarily people who speak for a living. What we have on that red TEDx dot is people who are speaking from lived experience, and through their lived experiences have reflected and come up with an idea that they believe can support and help other people. So TEDx is not an event for professional speakers per se, although of course you will meet professional speakers on the red TEDx dot. The second thing that a TEDx event is not is it is not a political or a corporate event. Yes, a TEDx event will be about social change. It will be about equality. It will be about making the world a better place. But TEDx events have no political affiliation. And nor do TEDx events have a great, big, huge corporate machine behind them. We will have corporate sponsors for TEDx events. A lot of companies like to get behind the TEDx idea, but they have actually the rules around their influence over that event are really, really restrictive. So companies and corporations have no influence actually over who stands up on that red TEDx dot. In fact, if you're a sponsor of a TEDx event as a company, you are prohibited from putting speakers forward from your organization. The rules are very, very strict, so no external influences on TEDx events. And the last thing is, these are not slick, polished machines with deep, deep pockets. Every single one of the curators that you meet here this morning is a volunteer. They give their time voluntarily. They do not get paid a penny for running a TEDx event. They will go out and they will fundraise in order to pay professional experts to support them in running their event. Caterers do, after all, need to get paid. Videographers do, after all, need to get paid. But all of the money, all of the sponsorship that is raised for a TEDx event goes into running an amazing event for the audience. The TEDx curators give their time completely as a labor of love to the TEDx movement. So now that I've told you what a TEDx event is not, let me introduce you to our 4 curators this morning.
And let me tell you, folks, that when we introduce the 4 curators, I am going to disappear off screen so that I can watch for your questions. So start popping the questions in right now so that we can serve them up. So here we go. Let's introduce our guests.
So Derek, does that mean when we see you popping up on the screen, you've got lots and lots of questions for us?
That's absolutely right. As soon as I come back in, it'll mean that some of the questions have popped up and we're ready to serve them up.
Fantastic. Well, we'll keep a little eye out for you. Well, look, let's go and meet our curators for this morning. Thanks, Derek. We'll see you soon. Claire O'Hanlon, MBE, is the curator of TEDx Cookstown and founder of the Quiet Leaders Academy and the Shypreneur Coach, helping quiet women to become confident business leaders. Like many busy mums, Claire juggles home and family life, and in Claire's case, this takes on special significance, as she's a tireless advocate, lobbyist and campaigner on behalf of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a cause that Claire became very involved with after her son Luke was born with the condition. And Clara, thank you for all that you do in that space. That is the connection. That's the invisible red thread that binds us, Claire. Eva Grossman is the curator of TEDx Stormont and co-founder and CEO of the Centre for Democracy and Peacebuilding, where her vision is to offer hope to divided communities and to support the Northern Ireland peace process and to share the Northern Ireland experience with post-conflict societies around the world. Additionally, Eva is advisor to Rising Global Peace Forum in Coventry and director for public affairs at the Centre for the Resolution of Intractable Conflict at Harris Manchester College in Oxford. Eva, there is a huge, big, long list of accomplishments and achievements that I just don't have time to read out today, but we'll go with that for this morning. Janie Laser is curator of TEDx Dunleary. Communication, connection, and collaboration, combined with a strong sense of social justice, underpins what Janie does, including her work as a specialist speaker and life coach, celebrant, and accomplished speaker herself. Janie is an advocate for voluntary assisted dying in her role as founder of End of Life Ireland. And Janie, you're always bubbling with ideas. A conversation with you is never long enough. And Sam, finally, thank you for waiting patiently. We're going in alphabetical order here, and your name begins with S. Sam Warner, curator of TEDx Telford, otherwise known as the Autistic Interpreter, is a project manager turned neurodiversity champion. Sam works with organisations, mainly in the IT industry, to help them to leverage the talents of neurodivergent individuals in teams by improving communication and behaviours so that the team can be more productive. As a speaker, Sam is a distinguished Toastmaster and a member of the Professional Speaking Association. And Sam, right there is our connection. We have stood on nerve-wracking stages together. So it's a pleasure, ladies, to invite you all to this morning's event. So look, we've talked a little bit this morning about what a TEDx event is not. I would really like to, first of all, explore some of the ideas that really contribute to what a TEDx event is. And in the first instance, I'd like to look at the whole idea of place. And TEDx events are local events that take place in communities all over the world. And look, Claire and Eva, I might come to you first on this question. Claire, what did the idea of place mean to you when you first curated TEDx Cookstown? And Cookstown, for those of you that are joining us from different locations around Europe, Cookstown is a town in Northern Ireland where I'm based. And Clara, this is actually where you come from yourself. So when you set up TEDx Cookstown, what was your ambition? What was your idea? Why TEDx Cookstown?
Yeah, well, like a lot of people, I've been a fan of TEDx for a long time. So I've been to a few events in cities and I'm quite a curious person. So I did often wonder how that kind of event would work in a rural area. So for anybody that doesn't know, Cookstown is there's three main towns in our region, which is Mid-Ulster. So Cookstown's right in the centre. And Mid-Ulster is a very rural area, so we are, I suppose you could say, out in the sticks, although we are quite geographically linked to other areas. But even though we are a rural area, we are actually what I would call the heart of Northern Ireland. We actually have the fastest growing economy outside of Belfast. We contribute 12% of Northern Ireland's exports. We are an engineering manufacturing hub. We are a hub of innovation. We have the Innotech Centre in Southwest College, which is in Cookstown. We have the Food Innovation Centre, also in Cookstown. We have a big education hub. We have a lot of advocates for integrated education. So there's a lot going on in Mid-Ulster. And in my background as a business advisor, I've had the privilege to meet hundreds, maybe thousands of people within Mid-Ulster who have really great ideas. They're really passionate about what it is that they do. And for me, all of that tied in so nicely with the whole ethos of what TEDx is about. So like when I was organising my event, a lot of people were telling me their stories, and stories are wonderful. They're a very powerful communication tool, but TEDx, as you alluded to, isn't all about the stories and the inspiration. You will be inspired, but it's about the ideas. You know, it's about spreading new ideas. It's about, starting conversation, starting that debate, and that's across a whole range of topics. So everything from, education, science, technology, religion, arts. And for me, our place, Cookstown, really was a hub of all of that, and really was the perfect place to host the event in a rural area. And I suppose for me as well, just thinking of the people who had applied for my TEDx event, they were talking about bringing ideas to Mid-Ulster, but that's not what it's about. It's about taking ideas from Mid-Ulster and sharing them with the world. And I just really wanted to bring that platform to Mid-Ulster to give an opportunity for those people who I'd met with really fabulous ideas to share them with the world.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. A real tireless advocate for the area from which you come, Claire. Eva, what about you? Another Northern Ireland TEDx event, TEDx Stormont. What was TEDx Stormont all about when it first became a twinkle in your eye almost 10 years ago now?
Absolutely. Claire, I feel like moving to Mid-Ulster, you advertise it so well. You are definitely
everybody welcome.
Yes, Camila, it was exactly 10 years ago whenever I applied for my first TEDx license. And at the time, I used to work at the Northern Ireland Assembly. Again, for those who are from outside Island of Ireland, Stormont is a seat of the Northern Ireland Assembly. So it's one of the local legislature. And we were, I think, one of the first parliaments to host that event. I thought, how can we bring new ideas at the heart of the Northern Irish government? How can we move things forward? How can we help the peace and reconciliation and ambition of people across Northern Ireland and beyond, since Irish peace process has been a beacon of hope for people across the world. I've been traveling extensively, and everybody always looks at the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And by the way, we will be celebrating next year not only 10th anniversary of TEDx Stormont, but also the 25th anniversary of Belfast Good Friday Agreement. So I thought, why not do such an iconic and beautiful building on the hill, which also, represented some of the fractions and divisions, and Northern Ireland still struggles a little bit with, with dealing with the past. How can we bring new ideas, fresh ideas, share so much energy and ambition of people from across Northern Ireland and sometimes beyond? As Claire said, I've been very conscious over the years that it's a local event. We have to showcase local ideas to the global audiences. Now and again, I would have a speaker from outside Northern Ireland, but I sort of got more and more discipline of, providing this platform for people within the local community.
And Eva, knowing you as I do, I'm not a bit surprised that Stormont was the first parliament to run a TEDx event. I think you were running TEDx events before anybody even knew what TED.com was. So fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And look, I'm going to go to Janie and to Sam on the next one, because TEDx absolutely has a sense of place, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? And what is it that you want your audiences to take away? What's your goal? What when you first decided to run your TEDx event, what was the change that you wanted to see in the world? And Sam, I might go to you first of all on that one for TEDx Telford.
Thanks very much, Camilla. The change I wanted to see was a broadening of the minds of the attendees. I think sometimes people live in a town and they've been there perhaps all their lives, maybe their parents lived there too. And for some people, it's very difficult to get out of the town. Might be circumstances, might be financial, but the thing about putting on the TEDx event is you're bringing the world to them as much as you're allowing the world to listen to local voices. And I think the reason why my first event sold out before we knew it was like, wow, all the tickets have gone. I was amazed, was because it was novel, it was fresh, it was exciting. And for a town that's predominantly manufacturing based, it was really bright and shiny and new and wonderful. And I was so pleased to be able to bring that experience, that excitement to them.
It sounds like there are some links there between the Middleston, the heartland, the throbbing heart of Northern Ireland, Claire, as you described it, and Telford there with that manufacturing base. Janie, what about you? TEDx Dunleary, definitely not a seat of manufacturing. What was it that you wanted to achieve with TEDx Dunleary?
It's an interesting thing because my feelings very much echo Sam. But Dunleary, seaside town, a high level of education, if you like, very comfortable in many ways, even though socially there is a mix. Obviously, old established communities here, working class communities, but also it's seen as very, if you like, very south side. That's probably the best way to put it. And what I wanted to do was to really open people's minds, have different speakers presenting different perspectives, because we come with preconceived ideas on how things should be, how we don't want them to change. And I think sometimes when you hear people's stories, then people can engage, and it just opens hearts and minds. And really, we've always been about inclusion from day one. Inclusion, and also from day one, we've had, if you like, two sections: the youth section, and I still can't find a word for adults. But if you like, yeah, the two sides of it, because unless we keep in touch with our youngsters and what challenges they're facing, we get too comfortable, and the world is changing all the time.
Yeah, great. I think we're all about the ideas here this morning. And actually, it's probably worth mentioning at this stage, we have 4 curators of TEDx locations. 2 other types of TEDx events that exist are corporate TEDx events. So a company can decide to put on a TEDx event internally. By the way, make sure, if that is you, that you have a really strong idea as to why you want to run a TEDx event in your company. I think some of those TEDx events are the most challenging events to get through the TED organization in New York, because if there's a sniff or a glimmer of self-interest in that application, it will be rejected. TEDx is, as we've heard already from our curators this morning, all about ideas worth sharing. So corporate events also exist, and of course, the university events. For example, in Northern Ireland, I have personally supported TEDx Queen's University Belfast, and that's a real opportunity for students, alumni, everybody in the university community to share ideas. So ideas, events outside of the place events also exist. But at this point this morning, what I would really like to turn my questions to are, we've heard about what our curators want from their events and what they're there to try and achieve. What is it that they are looking for in a TEDx speaker? Let's try and unpack that a little bit. Claire, I might go to you first of all on that one. You're running TEDx Cookstown for the very first time. What did you want from your speakers?
Yeah, so for me, it's all about the impact. So I think probably my years of work experience and life experience, for me, it's all been about the impact. And I want someone who has an idea that is actually going to change lives, and not just by, telling them an inspirational story, but will actually give them some food for thought, something that will make them behave differently than they did before. Now, obviously, that's not going to be the case for everyone who listens to that talk, but I want them to have an idea in their mind as to what the impact is that they want to create. I also want someone who is passionate about their idea. You had mentioned self-interest there. It's very apparent in an application when someone wants to do a TEDx talk for their own self-interest or to grow their business, because their application talks all about their business and what they're doing in their business. What I wanted to see is your idea, why that idea matters to you, and the impact that that's actually going to have on the world. So that's the main thing that I'd be looking for.
Great platform. I mean, I've worked with, hundreds of TEDx speakers at this stage, and really you've synopsized it there. It's not all about your story, although your story is hugely important. It's more than that. It's about what is the message, what's the lesson, what's the idea wrapped up in your story. How can your story help other people? How can it help them to change behavior? And what's your connection to that idea? Sam, you're nodding. Would you like to come in on that one? Your speakers, TEDx Telford. How many times have you run TEDx Telford now, Sam?
Twice, but
Twice.
I had 30 speakers over those 2 sessions because I decided that I wanted to do 15 speakers per event, which isn't the brightest
Ambitious.
idea I've ever had. And when I put another one on, I'm going to reduce that to 10 because actually I think the audience got very tired. It's a lot to take in and process. And I just think it's challenging all round when you have too many speakers. As a takeaway for anyone who wants to put their own TEDx on. But yeah, what I'm looking for in speakers is always, will that message change someone's mind today? Will they think differently about something? Will they be moved emotionally or even logically to do something different in their lives? And I think that's the magic of TEDx, that it can open people's minds. That's the bit I love the most.
And Sam, when people came to you, you had 30 speakers. How many applications did you have?
Well, so I was quite canny because I didn't want to spend most of my life watching application videos and reading applications. So I capped it at 2 weeks. And that meant I only had about 40 applications per event, rather than, I know that TEDx Leamington Spa, for example, which is one of the larger events, they have over 200 applications every year. And I just don't have the time to go through 200 applications. And I also reply to every single person who applied. And I let people know why they didn't make it through and how they might improve for next time. Because I want them to achieve it if that's what they really want to do. So there's a sort of a personal touch.
So we're talking 15 people out of approximately 40 applications. What jumped out? What were the things that straight away you went, bing, that is just what I want when you saw those applications? Were they videos? Were they written? What were they?
It was really when it was apparent quite early on, either in the video or the written application, that they were doing this for the greater good. And I thought, oh, you're really buying into what TEDx is there for. It wasn't about, I want to promote my business, or I've just written a book or something like that. It was entirely about, I am burning to get my message out there, to get this idea out into the planet because it needs to be heard or watched or whatever. And that was the easy yes when I had those people. So if anyone is applying and they're able to convey quickly inside 2 minutes exactly what it is that their idea is, they shouldn't worry about revealing their idea. Your TEDx organizer is the person you need to reveal your idea to. Otherwise, if it's not clear what your idea is, it's not easy to say yes. It's much easier to say no, because it might sound like that person hasn't formed that idea fully, or they're not quite sure about it, not quite confident about it. And whilst that's not definitely a no, it's just much harder to say yes if the person presenting it isn't really sure what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great point, Sam. I mean, what you're talking about there is go for it. Put it all on the line. Hold nothing back. And Janie, I noticed that you're nodding as Sam is speaking. What do you think in terms of how many events now? You said you've run 4 different TEDx Dunleary events. When you reflect back on how you selected speakers and the speakers that maybe stood out from the stage, what do you think now for your next event you will be really keeping top of mind when it comes to speaker selection?
I think after I suppose the last few years working with different speakers, year one, very, very, I was, I suppose, naive in many ways. You learn how to do things differently, and the biggest turn off for me is when somebody is so focused on themselves, and yeah. Oh no, I'm looking at you, Sam, and it's exactly that. I insist that the coaching process is collaborative. So absolutely now I know that what I do works, that I want speakers to buy into that, to commit to that process, because it's, if you like, I'm just the ringmaster. I just make things happen. How much our speakers buy into the process and collaborate with each other and help each other, in the sessions that we have, but also outside of that, brings out the best of the speakers. And as you said earlier, Camilla, they're not all professional. They're not. The best speakers are the ones who don't normally speak in public, because you're just giving them that opportunity to really shine. I look for selflessness.
That's really coming out strongly from the three of you so far that have spoken on this. And I see Derek has popped up. Derek, I'm going to go to Eva with that question, and then we'll hear what maybe some of our audience questions that are coming in about. Eva, I've worked with you now closely for over the course of many events, and I know that you will concur with a lot of the sentiments that have already been expressed. There's something there that Janie has just touched on, which is that whole coaching process and speakers supporting one another, and if you like, the infrastructure around the event. You don't just apply for a TEDx, speak to a curator, and then turn up on the day. How important do you think all of that support and all of that community and all of that environment around the TEDx event is for the speakers and for the success of the event on the day?
Absolutely. TED is not just one of event, it's the entire community. It's a global community, and it's probably what adds to the kudos of the entire event, but it's also the journey. So it's from identifying the idea, identifying speaker, reaching out to them, engaging with people, and then taking them on a journey of, curating the talk, coaching, and we worked very closely, Camila, with you and Sarah. It's absolutely crucial how speakers support each other, give the moral support, give the practical support. Quite often those talks are emotional. There are ideas which people share. People feel very vulnerable. As we said, some people will be, and speakers very experienced in public speaking, very confident. Others, maybe for the first time, would stand on the stage. And we know that those talks where there is a degree of humility are often the best. Over the years, I used different methods to select speakers. Probably only on 2 occasions, and I curated probably about 14 events. We issued an open call. And it was very, very difficult because there would be a lot of good people coming along, and it was very difficult to say no and to go through the selection process. In most of the cases, I would invite speakers. I would search for ideas, and I would very heavy rely on recommendations. And probably this was at the core. I know, Camila, that we work with the hard-to-reach communities. We worked with young people. We hosted open mic events where it also helped us to identify speakers which we not even dream of approaching. And this is probably where the most satisfaction comes from, where we're providing platform to those who carry amazing ideas and experiences within themselves, and perhaps are not, confident speakers. As Jenny and Sam and Claire said, it's really difficult when you're approached by professional speakers or people who send you, cold messages through LinkedIn saying I just delivered a talk or 2 talks and I want to do another one, and perhaps this is not the best way to go about, it's a very delicate balance between being confident enough to reach out to somebody, but then having enough humility to realize that that there is something there.
My goodness me, I mean, passion coming from all 4 of you. It's all about the ideas, isn't it? And a huge, huge, strong theme coming through there of humility and the desire to serve, the desire to take your idea and to help the audience who's standing or sitting in front of you. Derek, you've been waiting patiently. What is it that our audience wants to know?
Yeah, and I have to reflect what you just said there. This is giving even me a really different perspective on what TED is all about. And Satvik, who I think is sitting in Sri Lanka. By the way, we have people from Sri Lanka, Netherlands, UK, Australia, Ireland, Philippines, Kenya, and Egypt on the call this morning. So the United Nations of TEDx. And Satvik said, as a TEDx speaker myself, you brought out a simple and important point. Our talk needs to inspire somebody to take action. He said, for example, I would love to understand more about Claire's work. Claire's work with muscular dystrophy. And Aoife, on the other hand, is getting into a very practical question. She said, what's the application process like? And how do you find out about events that you could potentially apply for?
Oh, that is the $1,000,000 question. And Eva has already alluded to the fact that, well, twice in 14 different events have you held an open call. So Eva, you've talked about the fact that you relied heavily on recommendations, people coming to you and saying, I've heard this amazing speaker. I think they have fantastic things. I think you need them on your red dot. Janie, what have you done for TEDx John Leary? How have you gone out to find speakers?
A mix of different things. Just to answer one of the questions that you had there, how do people find out about TED? When you apply for your license, you enter your details. Again, there's a lot of back-end work with TEDx that you have to submit your license application, and your event then is up on the TED event page. So anybody really who wants to know wherever any events are, that's where they can go to find out where events are in your respective
How far in
country.
advance would that happen, Janie? So you've applied for your license, typically 6 months out or something like that?
It really depends. Once you apply, then your license is valid for a year. So you can actually change the date. Most people tend to stick to the same date. But it's all the information is always up on, if you like, the main TED events page. How do we look for our speakers? Goodness, I'm all year round. I'm keeping an ear out. I meet different people. You might hear the most unassuming person, and you just think there's something there, and you can almost see their story. But obviously, part of the coaching process is to bring out their story through their eyes. It'll be by invitation. I'll also do a call out, and I'm probably now more ruthless than Sam in that I put on the this Facebook page that the a call out will be done at a particular time, and there is a window of 1 week.
Wow.
Where, because otherwise, you're looking through your inbox trying to find everything, and at least then it means that people have got that deadline. They know exactly when they have to submit it by, and I always ask for a 1-minute video. And again, that's another way of filtering the process. Even if it's 1 minute and 20 seconds over, it's a way of filtering it. Because what you want is for somebody to be able to communicate their idea within the time allocated. And that's one of the simple processes. But a call out, and all to be received within a 1 week period. Like you, Sam, I will reply to everyone. And I always try to give the good news on a Friday.
How lovely. So really, Janie, you do an open call. What's the balance between people coming in over an open call versus people by invitation?
It depends. Last year I had predominantly by invitation only.
It was your fourth event, so you built up probably a number of speakers maybe that you'd met for previous events that maybe there was a clash of ideas for that particular event, but you thought they had a fabulous idea and I want to have them in the future, that type of thing.
It really is a mix, and I think the one thing that aspiring speakers don't appreciate is that we're actually putting on an event as well. So somebody can have a really good idea, but you're putting together an event, and you have to plan the whole event so that you get a good audience experience, because that is what TED are looking for as well. They research us afterwards. They send out emails to the audience members. So it may be that the idea is really, really good, but just this particular year, it just doesn't fit in.
Would you almost keep that speaker back, Janie, and keep them on the shelf, so to speak? Would you have them there as somebody that you could then revisit or come back to for your event next year?
Sometimes, yes. It really depends, and again, this is I suppose where dynamics come into it. How a person accepts a rejection, if you like. says an awful lot about them.
Wow, that's interesting. Who would have thought? Sam,
Yeah,
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead. Please do go ahead and finish your point.
No, I would definitely keep them on standby. It just says a lot about a speaker, how they handle the rejection, but also sometimes then that speaker will come back, potential speaker will come back and say, can I help you? Can I volunteer? At least then I can learn more about the process.
Wow.
And sometimes people have volunteered and come back and they're happy with that. Other people go out and they just want to speak on the red dot anywhere.
Yeah.
And Sam, I did notice you coming in, and that was why I went to you on that one. For your event, your very first event, you probably don't necessarily have a whole swathe of invite-only folks that you have on the roster already. You did do an open call. What happened there, and how did that change the way that you went about it the second time?
Well, being a Toastmaster, I had 14 Toastmasters apply, which was quite amazing. I could have run the whole event just with Toastmasters, really. However, it was very apparent that there's quite a large leap from a 5 to 7 minute Toastmaster speech and a 3 to 18 minute TEDx talk. And Toastmasters should know that they are quite different creatures. And just because you know me doesn't mean you're going to get a speaking slot, and that was sort of tough love for a lot of people. We ended up with just two people.
Was that hard to say no to your friends?
No, not at all. My reputation's on the line as much as anything else, because I'm the figurehead for the whole event. But also, I had a panel that I chose of 7 people, and I deliberately chose people who came from different backgrounds, different genders, different ages, because I wanted not just my brain to select people for the stage. I wanted to get other people's views on whether or not a message was clear, whether they thought that person could articulate it. And that almost gave me like a micro audience to test, would this person work out for me? And we had a whole scoring thing, like, gotta love your Excel spreadsheets, whole scoring thing. And then we were able to independently watched all of the applications and then came up with our scoring, and then we collated it to get like the cream of the crop. And then we whittled it down to 15 speakers. And even then, sometimes we go, we've only got 12. So now we need to go back out and think, who would we like to invite? And that's where we blended the applications with the invitees.
Yeah, very good. So you had 15 slots, and even though you had a larger number of applications than that, it wasn't a case of, well, we'll just fill the slots. You needed to have a certain criteria met.
Yeah, and mainly it wasn't about the talent on the stage. When I talk about people being able to articulate their thoughts or their idea, it's, can they actually tell me what their idea is? Can they put it into a few sentences? Or have they been speaking for half an hour and I still don't know what they're talking about?
Well, Claire, you've organised one TEDx event, and I'm sure the next time you do it, you will have lots and lots of ideas about how you could refine and develop that process. Let's look at Derek. Derek is sitting on screen with us right now. How did you find Derek, or how did Derek find you?
Derek found me. So I had maybe half and half. So like half of mine were from applications and the other half were people that I approached. So Derek I used social media mostly to put out the applications. So mostly LinkedIn, most of my applications came from there. And that's where Derek found me as well. So he had actually sent me a message on LinkedIn, and I thought he was really clear about what his idea would be. And he sent me a video of like a previous talk that he had done, and it was very much in alignment with what I would have wanted to see from a speaker. And I suppose more broadly than that, I think sometimes the journey to becoming a TEDx speaker can be a bit of a slow burner, and I think it's worthwhile getting to know, like, all of the TEDx creators are on the TEDx website, so it is easy to go in and find out who creates these events and then find out more about them. Like, most TED curators are quite active in their communities. It's easy to find out about them and what's important to them. And no, they don't run the event and they don't choose all of the ideas, but if you know what's important to them, you can perhaps articulate your idea or pitch your idea in a way that is going to stand out to them. And I think Derek definitely did that.
Know your audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just tag something on the back of that? Satvik just came in and on something you said there, Claire, and he said that all of he knows if he goes onto the TEDx page, he gets details of all the events. He said, but they don't tend to provide contact information for the curators, and it can be difficult to find that. What are your suggestions?
Yeah, well, most of them. Yeah, sorry, most of
no,
the.
Sorry,
so
go ahead.
Sorry. So even though the curator details might be there, the details of the event will be there. So usually most events will also have a website, or they'll have a social media presence, so you can go in and find them that way. Probably the easiest.
Derek, are there any other burning questions as we come into the tail end of our event this morning?
Yeah, there are a couple, and I think in some ways the ladies have addressed a couple of them. But Meta in London says, so what would be your best suggestion or tip or trick, if you like, for really getting the application where it needs to be to catch your attention?
Well, Eva, given that you don't tend to hold open calls, serendipity, I think, and being out and being active in the community would be a large driver of how you find many of your speakers. How would you answer that question for Meta in London?
Well, there are a couple of things which I think that all the colleagues pointed this out. First of all, go to TED.com website. Go to TEDx subpage and research what events are happening in your area, because on the end of the day, TEDx, it's a locally organized event, so it's very easy to find out, and there are guides and information what is expected of TEDx speaker. So, how many times I cannot tell you, I came across people who haven't got an idea what TED is, or got, as colleagues said on this call, think that, it's a great platform to promote their product or their company and so on. So all the information is there. So do preparation work, prepare. And I think that everybody, especially Sam, said, be prepared to explain what your idea is in one sentence. If you are unable to do that, it's a very, very hard journey, of getting calls and so on. And do not be afraid to reach out to people, curators, even if there isn't an open call. If you feel that your idea is relevant to the area, of the local event. As I said, while I mostly look for speakers within Northern Ireland, within Belfast, if somebody came to me and said, Eva, actually, this is very relevant to peace building, this is very relevant to reimagining Belfast or divided societies, I would welcome anybody from any part of the world. But what we probably all do not appreciate is the cold calls of sort of motivational speakers, and it's I want to do a talk because I want something on my CV. No, I want to do a talk because I know that my idea can change the world. So the application, as with every application, being your job application or a sales speech or whatever, you have to prepare and keep it simple. And all the information is on TED.com. I cannot stress enough, how many resources they are available widely.
Think, plan, prepare, like anything. Well, do you know what? Couldn't have had a better summary there. Ladies, before we wrap up this morning's session, I'd love you to reflect back on your engagement with your TEDx event and think, what was my standout moment? What was the best thing that an audience member said to me about my event? Or perhaps somebody who's watched a video online and has reached out to you. What do you remember? Are there any standout moments from your TEDx career that you'd like to share? Eva.
Wow, you took me quickly on a big trip, along the memory lane. And as you know, we had quite a few remarkable speakers. Some of them are no longer with us, and their TED Talks are their legacy. And getting we talked about provide a lot of us providing feedback to speakers. It is as important for us to get feedback. It is as important after the event to get this little email saying, by the way, I attended your event and I heard the speaker and it changed my life. sometimes speakers will send me messages saying how an audience member was impacted. And, on a number of occasions, I had tears in my eyes. Because sometimes we share difficult stories. Sometimes, we provide platform to address big social issues. Recently on gay conversion therapy, I know that right now it's a big news story, and how perhaps a family member got reunited, or how people, how the TED Talk brought some healing or real change. And those are those little moments of of satisfaction and victory that, like, it's, as we all know, it is really hard to organize those events. It's, we're putting a lot of energy, a lot of resources in. And, like, even if we can just, one life, we can change, and make somebody a better person, or bring together those broken relationships or broken hearts or broken minds. It's absolutely, utterly amazing. So I would encourage everybody who seen the talk and been touched to reach out to the speakers or organizer, because it's very important for us to know and to measure the impact we are making.
Eva, I've just had a TED Talk pop into my mind as you were speaking. Everybody here needs to Google Drew Dudley's Lollipop TED Talk, because it synopsizes Eva's idea. If there's something that's touched you, go find that person and make sure that they know it. Thank you so much, Eva, for that. And Claire, I might ask you the same question. Your standout moment from your event, what's the thing that touched your heart? What's the thing that just made you go, all of those sleepless nights, they were just worth it?
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. I think probably, like, on the day when the speakers had finished, and you could, like, see the joy in their faces, and it was nearly like they had their own little community, and they knew, like, all of my speakers were amazing, obviously, but they had delivered their once in a lifetime kind of talk, and they knew that they were impactful. So I suppose even seeing that and knowing that, it had been worthwhile. Other things would be, things that the speakers have done afterwards. I know a couple of my speakers have gone on, they've taken their ideas even further. Some have gone into politics because their passion for their idea has got even stronger. That others have created, during lockdown, someone had created something to take loneliness away from people and to really help people to thrive during lockdown. And it was really nice to see that. Half of our talks were also put up on the TED.com website, so upgraded, and I know that meant so much to the speakers as well. And another thing that I really loved about our event is that I couldn't have done it without it, and I was a little annoyed that we didn't have an audience because of lockdown, things like that, but we did have Mobiloo come. So obviously, being a disability campaigner, that was really important to me to have that there and to make sure that our event was completely accessible. One of our speakers was disabled and can't use a regular disabled toilet, so we were able to bring in that accessibility as well. So I was quite pleased with that.
Oh my goodness, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Sam and Janie, I think you probably have 30 seconds to give me the answer to that question, because I know Derek wants us all to be away within a few moments. So Sam, in 30 seconds or less, your memory, your most memorable moment.
So when I put the first event on, at the very, very end, when we were wrapping things up and I was doing my MC bit, one of the members of my team came up and gave me a bunch of flowers, and I got a standing ovation for 7 minutes.
Wow.
Oh my
7 minutes is
word.
a really long time. And it blew me away. It was like waves of love coming towards me, which I rapturously received. But I've never felt an audience like it in my life. So just as much as we might encourage a TEDx speaker to apply, I'd love to encourage people to think about putting on a TEDx event, because there's nothing quite like the reward of helping speakers find their voice, and you do get a reward as well.
Contributing to the TEDx community. Janie, your most memorable moment.
The most memorable moment, I mean, there are a few youth speakers that really stand out and their stories. But the one moment I think that will always stand out for me was seeing the parents' reaction when Joanne Chester, who is deaf, gave her talk, and having worked with her through interpreters, if you like, it opened my ears, my heart to what it's like to be deaf, but also seeing her parents hear their daughter. And that they were just sitting there, tears were coming down. I mean, everyone just...
Amazing, amazing. And that just about crystallizes what we've been talking about now for the last hour. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. So many ideas there to digest, so much solid advice for anybody who aspires to giving a TEDx talk. I thank you greatly for your time this morning, as with everything that you do, pro bono, volunteering, contributing back to the community. And for that, I am very, very grateful. Derek, over to you.
Great, thank you. And let me echo Camilla's thanks, Eva, Janie, Claire and Sam, and Camilla, of course, for doing all the heavy lifting and letting me off the hook this morning. The questions are blowing up and we'll never get to them all. But what I will do, folks, for the people who've asked questions that haven't been answered, we'll try and come back to you offline on those. One of them will be answered by Camilla in a session at the beginning of May, and it's from Lachlan in Australia, and I'm paraphrasing it down, and he says, basically, I have an idea that fits exactly what everybody's been talking about. I'm passionate about it. I'm great one-on-one, but when I stand up, I fall apart. How do I get the composure to be able to deliver my idea? And that's exactly what Camilla is going to be talking about in the session at the beginning of May. So great question. Some other people have some practical questions. There are a couple of TEDx speakers on there with a couple of practical questions as well. And we'll try to come out back to you with those offline. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for a fantastic, really, really great contributions this morning. Really appreciate it. And I hope if your calendar allows that you can hang around for 2 minutes afterwards, just while I say thank you to the folks who have been here as an audience as well. So I'll be back in a moment. So let me see. Yeah, so all I want to say to you is we have another great guest next week, and that's Vanessa Druskat. She is Associate Professor in New Hampshire University, and she is a specialist in belonging. There has never been a time when giving people a sense of belonging in the workplace and at home is more important. So it really is a great, very topical, don't miss sort of session. So thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for all of your questions. As I say, we'll take any of the ones that we can offline and reach back to you. But meantime, just thank you. It has been great. Appreciate the interaction, and we'll see you next week, please God. Take care. Bye-bye.